spotlights burned my face while I stood in the back of the Greenwich Country Club ballroom, clutching a controller everyone called a toy. My name is Lucas Grant. I was 36, the quiet son who built machines in Dad's garage while my brother learned handshakes. Dad's funeral had been that morning. Tonight was supposed to be a memorial toast. Instead, it felt like a coronation for Ethan. He raised a crystal flute and thanked our family for staying strong. They laughed when my drone's propellers flickered. Lucas brought his helicopter again. Marjorie purred, drawing polite giggles. I should have left. Instead, I launched. The drone skimmed over tuxedos and pearls, then slipped out through a cracked window into the November air. On my goggles, a boathouse door opened. Two shadows rolled a crate over the dock. A third checked a glowing tablet. The crate was stenciled with a hawk symbol I didn't recognize. A voice behind me. "Put that ridiculous thing away." I didn't. I descended, curious. One man looked up and smiled straight into my camera. My brother. Why was Ethan moving sealed crates at midnight on the night of Dad's will? "Lucas, you'll stand, please," Carla said. "Your father left you tools." That was the moment it started. The moment the room tilted, just slightly. I stood because Carla asked, not because I wanted to. Everyone else stayed seated, legs crossed, smug expressions plastered like wallpaper. Ethan leaned back in his chair, one hand resting on the arm like he owned the damn place, which, it turns out, he soon would. Carla cleared her throat. To Ethan Grant, the Belle Haven residence, the Model X, and the majority voting shares in Grant Holdings. The room hummed with polite gasps. My stepmother, Marjorie, dabbed her eyes, not from grief, probably from joy that her golden boy got his empire. Then Carla turned to me. To Lucas Grant. The contents of storage unit 4B and one brass key noted as hobby equipment. Silence. Then a cough someone didn't bother to hide. A cousin snorted. Marjorie smiled sweetly. Well, our sweet boy with the gadgets gets to keep his toys. Ethan stood, walked over, and dropped the brass key into my hand like I was a valet. "Maybe you'll build a robot butler with all that gear," he said as if it were kindness. The key was cold and old, scratched. A thin white tag dangled from it with 4 numbers. 1138. My pulse twitched. That number. I'd seen it before, on a yellowing post-it, half tucked under Dad's workbench, back when he still had calluses and I still thought being overlooked was safer than being seen. Carla moved on with the will, her voice fading into the background. I sat down slowly, the brass key now cutting lines in my palm. Ethan had the mansion, the company, the status. I had a lock, but I also had memory. And if 1138 meant what I thought it did, Dad hadn't just left me junk. He'd left me something only I'd recognize. Something coded in plain sight. At the post-funeral reception, I kept to the edge of the room, blending into the wallpaper like usual. Eleanor Shaw, Dad's longtime business partner, approached with a drink and a look that made my stomach turn. She handed me a napkin folded twice over. "He meant for you to have this," she whispered. I opened it later, in the car. On it, a sketch of our old boathouse drawn in Dad's messy hand. A tiny drone symbol hovered above the roof, with a curved arrow pointing out over the water. What the hell had he seen from the sky that couldn't be seen from the ground? That night, I placed the key on my desk next to the drone kit Dad helped me build when I was 12. They thought they gave me a punchline. But I'd just been handed a mission. What exactly did Dad expect me to see from the sky? That I couldn't see from the ground? Dad used to say, "Eyes up, son," not chin up. Not keep your head high, just look up. Back then, I thought it was about flying drones. Now I wasn't so sure. I drove down to the public storage lot just outside Stamford. The key from Carla's office slid into locker 1138 like it belonged there. The door creaked open and a blast of cold air hit me. Dust, metal, old electricity. Inside were 2 large flight cases. One held my original drone, a slightly updated model of the one I'd built with Dad when I was 13. The other case, packed. Spare rotors, 3 lithium battery bricks, and a brand new thermal camera I never bought. On the wall, taped and laminated, was a no-fly map of our neighborhood's shoreline. A red circle was drawn over the inlet behind our old boathouse. The note below it was in Dad's handwriting. Avoid FAA alerts. Midnight, low alt, use thermals. He knew I'd fly it. Even after everything, he trusted that. As I powered up the tablet, my phone buzzed. Ethan, don't embarrass the family with your hobby. No. Hello. No. How are you? Just a warning. Like always. He was watching me. Or someone was. I launched just before 12:30 a.m., standing on the bluff near the tennis courts. The wind was light, the sky moonless. The drone rose in silence, dipped low, and sped toward the boathouse. Thermal view flickered on. 2 human heat signatures moved back and forth along the dock. One carried something rectangular, heavy, judging by the way his back curved. Another held a tablet, its screen hot white. Then the crate appeared in full thermal silhouette, solid mass, sharp corners, cool to the touch. A small hawk emblem was stenciled across the side. I blinked. I'd seen that hawk symbol before, burned into one of the ledgers tucked inside the waterproof tube under the dock, one of Dad's hobby files. Suddenly, a third figure emerged from the shadows of the boathouse door. Uncle Peter Klein. He wasn't supposed to be in Connecticut. Last I heard, he'd been consulting overseas. But there he was, in a windbreaker and gloves, barking orders I couldn't hear through the drone mic. He looked older, but not weaker, still the fixer. Then he did something strange. He walked to the edge of the dock, looked up, squinting into the dark, right where I hovered the drone, and he mouthed 2 words. Call Carla. I nearly dropped the controller. Why would Uncle Peter, of all people, tell me to call the family attorney? My first instinct was to bank the drone and back off. But I didn't. I hovered lower, just enough to see him smirk, like he knew I'd seen it. This was some game he was willing to play, as long as I played too. A second later, he turned his back and vanished into the shadows again. I recorded everything, downloaded it twice, saved it once to the drone's onboard chip, and again to a cloud folder Dad had me set up years ago under a weird fake name, Glide Path 54. When I got back to the car, I stared at the footage frame by frame. 2 men, 1 crate, a glowing tablet, and Peter mouthing a warning to me. I didn't sleep. Why would Uncle Peter, who never helped me once in his life, suddenly want me to call the lawyer? What the hell was he trying to warn me about, and who else was watching? I never see them here before midnight, Mike whispered, glancing over his shoulder like we were talking state secrets. He was the marina caretaker, a little younger than me with a sweat-stained ball cap, always smelling faintly of diesel and rope. We stood beside the boathouse in the middle of the afternoon, sunlight bouncing off the water like it was trying to blind me. My excuse for being there was vague. Closure, I told him. Family stuff. Grief. He didn't ask more. But he walked with me anyway. I don't know what they're moving, he added, but the cameras don't work at night. The power box gets tripped. Every damn time. I nodded slowly. That lined up with what I saw on the drone feed. The boathouse had changed. Gone were the old padlocks Dad used, replaced now with matte black industrial barrel locks, not something you'd buy at the hardware store. These were custom, high security. Overkill. Suspicious. I crouched near the back edge of the dock and ran my hand along the waterline. Nothing at first, just barnacles and old rope ends. But on the second piling, under the lowest crossbeam, my fingers hit something slick and cylindrical. I leaned further, heart pounding, fingers fumbling underwater. Finally, I pulled up a narrow plastic tube, zip-tied to the underside of the piling. It had been there a while, slime-covered but sealed tight. Inside, a small leather-bound ledger and a USB drive labeled in Dad's shaky handwriting, G.H. Founding, 1984. I sat in my car and stared at them for a long time before touching anything else. The ledger was warped from humidity, but readable. Dozens of entries, all handwritten. Each page started with a shell company name: Alta Coast Exports, Reef Stone Holdings, Cloud Bay Transfer, LLC. Under each one, dollar amounts, dates, and wire instructions, most routed through Cayman Island banks. Some had 7-figure transfers. Others were just cryptic notes like route via CB4 for privacy, or flag art culture item non-declared. I counted up the total wire amounts. My stomach clenched. 96 million. Dad had never told me about anything like this. It was too structured, too precise. I flipped to the back. That's when I froze. The last 4 pages were not in Dad's handwriting. I'd seen the loops before. The way the capital G curled backward. The way he dotted his I slightly to the right like he was always rushing the next letter. It wasn't Dad's, it was Ethan's. I flipped back through the ledger with shaking fingers. His writing showed up earlier than I expected, nearly halfway through. Some entries even listed PK next to shipment IDs. Peter Klein, my uncle. The USB drive? I hadn't even plugged it in yet. I didn't want to, not without copying it first. I knew enough to know this wasn't just shady accounting. This wasn't Dad hiding money. This was something bigger. If Ethan had kept a secret ledger and Dad never signed off on it, if $96 million had moved through fake companies under my brother's control, then maybe the toys Dad left me were never toys at all. They were tools. Why would my brother keep a secret ledger our father never signed? And what else was buried under our name? If this is a prank, Agent Dana Reese said, we'll both regret it. That was the first thing she told me after watching 10 seconds of my drone footage in a federal office that smelled like cold coffee and burnt carpet. She wore plain clothes, no badge on display, just a tablet, a pen, and eyes sharp enough to cut through anyone's story. I'm not wasting your time, I said. I handed over a flash drive. Thermal drone footage shot last night. Plus, scans of a ledger and a USB pulled from a waterproof tube under our family's boathouse dock. You'll want to start with the crate. She plugged in the drive. The screen came to life with a grainy thermal clip. 2 figures, one pushing a heavy crate, another with a glowing tablet. Dana paused the video and zoomed in. What's that on the crate? A hawk emblem. Same symbol I found in the ledger. She rewound and looked closer at the man with the tablet. The screen glowed white-hot on thermal. On the top corner, just barely visible, a tiny watermark. Dana leaned in. That's a customs brokerage app. Black Label Trade East Coast licensed. Not exactly consumer grade. I didn't say anything. She tapped the screen. And the guy using it, is he family? Not directly, I said. That's Peter Klein, my stepmother's brother. Dana sat back in her chair, arms crossed. All right, now I'm listening. I laid it all out. The boathouse. The storage unit. The laminated no-fly map Dad had left. The USB is labeled with the year his company was founded. And the ledger, pages and pages of wire transfers to offshore accounts through fake LLCs. Almost $96 million in total. Some pages were signed in a handwriting I knew too well. My brother's. I don't have hard proof on the cargo, I said, but I know it's not legal. Why else move it at midnight under blacked-out cameras? Dana didn't answer right away. She ran the shell companies listed in the ledger through her system while the thermal clip played again on a second screen. 5 minutes later, she turned to me. 3 of these LLCs are under investigation already. 2 tie directly back to Peter Klein's last known logistics firm, shut down 6 months ago for paperwork irregularities. She made air quotes with a deadpan face. Nice family. Not my side, I muttered. She ignored it. We'll open a passive watch on the marina. Quiet, no trucks, no uniforms. If something's moving through there, we'll see it. I'll keep flying too, I said. Dana gave me a long look. You're not a cop, Mr. Grant. Don't try to be one. I'm authorizing you to keep documenting, but you send everything to me. Don't go vigilante. Deal. She stood and slid a business card across the table. Homeland Security Investigations, Dana Reese. Her number was written in pen under the print. Just so we're clear, she said, HSI doesn't do family therapy. We prosecute federal crimes. If your brother's involved, he'll burn with the rest of them. I walked out of her office more shaken than I expected. That night, just after midnight, I launched again from the bluff. The drone hovered, silent, scanning the shoreline with thermal. But this time, something was different. The boathouse, normally lit with motion sensors, was completely dark. Cameras black. Dock lights out. Like someone knew we were watching. Had someone tipped them off, or were they already watching me? Smile, Lucas, Marjorie said, her hand tightening around my arm like a corset. Don't make your brother look poor in front of donors." She didn't wait for my response. Her lips were frozen in place. Too much Botox or too much ego? Probably both. The Grant Foundation's annual charity gala was in full swing. Chandeliers reflected off champagne flutes. The air smelled like old money and new lies. I stood near the bar, stiff in a tux that didn't fit quite right. Beneath my lapel, a mic from Homeland Security clung to my shirt like a secret. Agent Dana Reese had clipped it on herself just 2 hours earlier in a parking garage after reviewing the latest drone footage. "This isn't just for us," she'd said. "It's for the judge later." Ethan strolled toward me, arms wide, a glass of Macallan in one hand. "There's the man of the hour," he said, voice too loud, too warm. He hugged me tight and in one smooth motion lifted my phone from my inner jacket pocket. "Wouldn't want you doom-scrolling during speeches," he said, grinning. I tried to reach for it, but his eyes said, "Don't." Marjorie stood to the side, watching like a queen surveying her court. She nodded once, game on. Across the room, I spotted Eleanor Shaw near the silent auction display. She waved me over, a glass of water in her hand, untouched. "I shouldn't be talking to you," she whispered. "They already think I've said too much." "You haven't said anything." She glanced around. "Your dad and Marjorie, they fought about inventory, paintings, uninsured art. He said it didn't feel right, said someone was borrowing value that didn't belong to them." "Peter?" She just sipped her water and walked away. That was enough. I slipped through a side door and headed down the back terrace toward the private dock. The cold air punched me in the face, but I kept moving. Voices carried in the dark. I crouched behind a stack of catering crates and listened. Peter's voice, harsh, anxious. "I told you, 3 pieces are flagged. We can't push them through New Haven again." A second voice, lower, clipped, probably a customs guy. "If they show up on another manifest without provenance, it's my badge." Footsteps shifted. A metallic clank. Something heavy is being dragged. Peter snapped. "The coins are clean. The canvases are the issue. Get them on the water tonight or it's done." My heart pounded. This was it. The uninsured art Dad fought about. The Qatari buyer Peter had mentioned before. The thermal footage, the ledger, it all aligned. I backed away, careful not to snap a twig or shift gravel. I was nearly to the hedge line when a flashlight beam hit me full in the chest. "Mr. Grant," said a voice, "we need you to come with us." 2 security guards stepped forward. One had his hand on his earpiece, already talking to someone. I turned toward the ballroom, just in time to see Marjorie standing inside the glass doors, holding a champagne flute. She raised it, and smiled. Where were they taking me, and how much had she already planned? Carla finally spoke. "Your father added an amendment you've never seen." It was the first thing she said after shutting her office door. Her voice was calm, but her eyes weren't. They flicked between Marjorie, Ethan, and me like she already regretted letting any of us in. Just minutes earlier, Veronica had rescued me from the gala's security team, playing the concerned stepmother for all to see. "Oh, Lucas, really? Wandering around near the dock?" she said with an arm around my shoulder. "It's been a difficult week for all of us. Let's handle this." Quietly. She didn't ask what I heard. She didn't need to. Ethan followed close behind, glass still in hand, grinning like he'd just won a charity raffle. "Little brother's got nerves of steel," he said to Carla. "He probably thinks there's some big conspiracy." Carla didn't return the smile. She gestured to the chairs. None of us sat. "Lucas," she said carefully, "you know the will is airtight. Your father's instructions left no ambiguity. That's why I brought this." I pulled the USB from my inside pocket and placed it on her desk. She hesitated, then picked it up, her brow furrowed. "This date? This is the year your father and I incorporated his first holding company. He kept backups for legal continuity, but this wasn't filed with me." I nodded. "Check the folder called Founders Revision B." She plugged it in. Clicked. The screen filled with documents. Scanned pages, signature lines, and a red stamped file labeled Poison Pill Writer, active upon verified criminal use of Grant Holdings assets. Carla's mouth dropped open slightly. "He never told me this existed." Veronica stepped forward. Whatever that is, it's out of scope. Roger would never have gone behind legal. Carla shook her head. He didn't go behind legal. He went around it with his own board counsel. This was co-filed with Eleanor Shaw, notarized and held under a deferred condition. Ethan scoffed. That sounds made up. It's not, Carla replied. If a criminal offense involving company property is confirmed, smuggling, laundering, or misuse of assets, the primary voting shares revert to the non-offending heir, permanently. The room went still. All we need, I said quietly, is one verified contraband shipment tied to Ethan or Peter. Marjorie crossed her arms. This is absurd. That clause was buried for a reason. You're not getting control of the company just because you played with a drone. Carla ignored her. She was focused now, flipping through supporting documents. This could hold up, she muttered. If the footage and the ledger entries can be validated, if HSI confirms, then yes. Control would shift to Lucas, not partial, full. Ethan's face cracked for the first time all night. You're bluffing. Carla opened her drawer and reached for a binder. Then everything went red. The overhead lights blinked. Her computer screens flickered. A loud metallic buzz rang out, followed by the unmistakable shriek of the fire alarm. What the? She stood up. On her screen, lines of code were flashing. A remote wipe had been triggered. One file folder after another vanished. Founders, Revision B, Ledger scans. Drone feeds. Who authorized that? Carla barked. Ethan was already reaching for his phone. Veronica looked pale. I stood still, not surprised. They knew. The servers were being wiped. So, who pulled the trigger and what else just got buried with it? Text from Mike. Power cut in the cove. If you're doing something, do it now. I was already halfway down the bluff with the drone case under my arm when the message came through. The wind had picked up, cool, salty, restless. From the hilltop, the boathouse looked like a shadow swallowed by darker shadows. No lights, no reflections off the dock. Just black. They'd killed the power on purpose. I launched cold, disabling LED indicators and going full silent mode. No GPS, no return to home. Just raw manual control. The drone hummed up, slicing through the dark like a whisper. Thermal view activated. On screen, the shapes glowed white against the dark blue of the bay. 3 crates, each a rectangular heat ghost, were being loaded onto a white Boston whaler with no visible ID numbers. 2 men handled the cargo. A third man, smaller, stood back, holding what looked like a signal tablet. The boat was moored tightly to the dock. Suddenly, the drone twitched. A signal spike, strong interference. My screen glitched. Hood flickered, a jammer. Not military grade, but enough to start degrading my feed. I dropped altitude, skimming tree level. Below, the back of the largest crate rotated into view. On the side, a Hawk stencil, same as the last time, this time with an added marking. Hawk 0071A. A batch code. I veered hard left, circling the structure to the far side. I wasn't going to lose this flight, not now. As I passed the outer catwalk, something beneath a tarp shifted, and for a split second, the canvas flapped open. Oil painting. Large, framed, museum-grade seal stamped on the wood in gold foil. I dropped the drone down low behind the roofline and landed it manually, right on the boathouse rooftop. Then I pulled out the microcam Dana gave me. Magnetic base, weather-sealed. I clipped it to the roof lip facing the dock and started the feed. They had no idea I was there. From the microcam feed, I watched Peter Klein walk up to the boat. His face was drawn tight. Angry. He snapped his fingers at the guy with the tablet. Peter yanked the tarp back and peeled it open fully. 3 oil paintings, all with matching seals. Then he muttered something to the guy beside him. The tablet guy nodded and stepped off the boat. Peter looked around the dock, and this part chilled me. He smiled, like someone who knew exactly how close he was to finishing a deal. Then he looked up, and for one terrible second I thought he'd seen the cam. But he didn't. He looked past it. That's when I noticed the shimmer on the drone's shell. A tiny, perfect red laser dot danced across the carbon fiber casing, then held steady on the rear arm. Not a reflection. Not a bug. A targeting laser. Someone on the ground had spotted me and they were aiming. Was it just a warning? Or was someone about to shoot me out of the sky? Crack. The drone jolted, spinning slightly left as the rear propeller sliced the air unevenly. I gritted my teeth. They hit it. Somebody, on the ground with a rifle or a high-power airgun, had clipped the shell, but it was still flying. Limping, but alive. I pushed hard on the joystick, banking right in a tight arc. The motors screamed, off balance but responsive. I didn't retreat, I dove. The drone shot downward in a tight spiral and slammed into the T-top of the Boston whaler, right above the two men who had just finished loading the last crate. The impact was loud, sudden. The boat rocked. One of the men shouted. Peter cursed. I caught movement from the corner of the roof-mounted microcam. Ethan, storming onto the dock, sleeves rolled, voice raised. "You're ruining everything," he yelled, pointing straight at the boat. "You don't even understand what Dad was doing." I couldn't help it. I stood up from my perch above the boathouse roof and shouted back, "You mean smuggling museum art and dirty coins through shell companies?" Peter turned. "Idiot," he snapped. "That microcam's still live." But it was too late. The feed on my tablet recorded every word. From the cam's angle, I saw Peter grab Ethan by the elbow and hiss something close to his ear. Then he turned back toward the dock hands. "The Qatari buyer won't wait," he barked. "Move the third canvas and the coins tonight. Load the backup crate, too." Ethan looked stunned. He hadn't known about a backup crate. Good. I was about to reach for the tablet to zoom in when I heard it. Sirens. Low at first, then growing louder, echoing over the bay. Red and blue lights flickered over the tree line. 3 boats surged through the channel, Homeland Security, marked and armed, cutting water like torpedoes. On the bow of the lead boat, Agent Dana Reese, wind in her coat, eyes locked on the dock like a bloodhound on scent. She didn't shout, didn't wave. She pointed once and half a dozen agents leapt into action. The whaler was intercepted before it could even untie itself. Crates opened. Flashlights flashed. Zip ties clicked. One agent peeled back a canvas tarp. Inside, a pile of ancient gold coins, tarnished but unmistakable, tagged with a museum code. 2 of the crates had embargo warnings stenciled in Spanish and Arabic. One crate hadn't even been registered with the customs manifest at all. Dana walked straight up the dock, silent. Marjorie emerged from the trees, heels crunching gravel, her composure cracking with every step. Peter tried to walk away. 2 agents grabbed him. Dana stepped beside me without even turning her head and said calmly, "You just triggered a federal case." I looked over at Marjorie. Her face was stone, cold, flat. No tears, no rage, just resignation. She knew. The crates were opened. The footage was rolling. Homeland Security was here. But how many people had helped them? And how deep did it all go? "Where's the rest?" Dana asked, not looking at me. She was flipping through the final pages of the ledger, now scanned, sealed, and stored in a digital evidence vault. "The ledger says 96 million, she continued. "We've only seized 22. I swallowed. "It's there. You just haven't found it yet." The next 12 hours felt like a slow-motion collapse. Dana brought in a financial crimes unit to trace the ledger's wire paths. Dozens of transactions routed through companies with names like Seabluff Ventures and Klein Maritime Logistics. Most of the money landed in Cayman and Belize, scattered through a forest of blind trusts. But one trail led to a Delaware holding account, tied to a family trust, administered by Marjorie. She played the part well. "Of course, I managed family assets," she told the agents, her voice full of offended dignity. "Roger trusted me to protect the family's long-term legacy." Dana raised an eyebrow. "And how much of that legacy did you park offshore?" Marjorie didn't answer. Meanwhile, Ethan folded. In a closed-door interview, he blamed Peter for manipulating Dad's legacy, saying he only signed things under pressure. He looked like a scared teenager, not the golden heir. Peter, lawyered up in under 30 minutes, refused to speak. Rumors were that he'd already called a guy in Zurich. Then came Eleanor, quiet as always but firm. She came into Dana's office carrying 2 accordion files. "These are Roger's original insured inventory reports," she said. For the foundation, for the gallery, and for the trust. Dana flipped through them. The pieces we seized, the paintings, the ancient coins weren't on any list. Never insured, never declared. Stolen, Dana said. Silently removed and monetized. Exactly what Dad suspected. Exactly why he left me the tools. That afternoon, Carla filed a civil motion in probate court invoking the poison pill clause from the hidden amendment. The evidence was enough. The microcam footage, the shipping manifests, the coin tags, the ledger, the offshore trail. It all pointed to one conclusion. Ethan and Peter used Dad's company to move millions in illegal, undeclared, high-value assets. Marjorie oversaw the trust they disappeared into. Within 48 hours, a state judge issued a temporary restraining order on Ethan's control of Grant Holdings. Voting shares frozen. Financial activity halted. All pending distributions are locked. I watched Ethan sink into a courtroom chair like the air had left his body. The cameras caught everything. And still, Marjorie didn't break. Not until the federal marshals stepped into Carla's office to escort her for questioning. She smoothed her blazer, adjusted her pearl earring, then stepped close to me. I didn't move. She leaned in, smiling, just enough to keep it photogenic, and whispered in my ear, "You think you won? You never knew your father." And then she was gone. What did she mean? What else was buried in my father's legacy? Something even I hadn't seen. Carla slid a plain cream-colored envelope across her desk. Dad's handwriting curved across the front in faded black ink. For Lucas, when he's finished flying. I didn't open it there. I waited until I was alone in Dad's workshop. Same dusty pegboard. Same coffee-stained blueprint pinned to the wall. The same hum of silence. Inside was a single letter. "Lucas, if you're reading this, it means you figured out how to fly without instructions." Good. I suspected them, Marjorie, Peter, even Ethan, but I didn't know how deep it went. They used the company as a shell. The art, the money. I kept seeing gaps, inventories that didn't balance, shipments that never cleared. I left you the tools because I knew you'd never look away. You're the only one who ever looked up. Use what you find, but stay grounded. Truth comes heavy. Not everyone survives it. Love, Dad. I sat there for a long time. The next day, the forensic report landed. Homeland Security confirmed it. Over $96 million, including off-book consulting fees, funneled into a shell company Ethan registered 2 months before Dad's first hospitalization. The ledger was real. The drone footage was admissible. The poison pill clause held up in probate. The court granted me full voting control of Grant Holdings. Ethan signed a plea deal in exchange for cooperation. Peter was indicted. Marjorie's trust was frozen. She refused to speak to me during her deposition. Her silence for once felt honest. At a press conference 3 weeks later, I stood where Ethan once raised a champagne flute. I didn't smile. I announced the Grant Restitution Fund, dedicated to returning stolen artifacts and frozen assets to their rightful owners and institutions. I dissolved every shell company tied to the scandal. I handed off power to a new board and stepped aside. I was never meant to lead an empire. I just wanted to clean it. Back at the office, Dana Reese stood next to the glass display case we'd installed in the lobby. Inside it sat the drone. Scratched. Bent. Still intact. "Toys, huh?" she said with a smirk. I nodded. Best investment Dad ever made. She left. I stayed a moment longer. Because that's when I saw it. A small black micro SD card lying in the center of my desk. No note, no envelope. Just a thin yellow label. No V12. Pre-stroke. Mike's handwriting. I turned it over in my hand. The date was before Dad's first medical episode. Before the suspected siphoning. Before the will. There was more. Humiliation made me quiet. Truth made me loud. Dignity isn't given. You fly for it. Subscribe for more real stories that hit harder than fiction. The next one starts where this one ends.